Open up your taste buds and prepare yourselves for a flavour sensation. It's going to be red hot, it's going to be spicy, it's going to be tasty, it's going to be dish-licious, it's going to be mouth-watering goodness. We've got butchers, we've got light on them, and most delicious of all, we've got my face. And we've got some people in the chat already for this one. Lockdown hobby time. I think we're on episode 33 now. There wasn't any yesterday, as you will have noticed, because it was too damn hot in here. It's a bit cooler today though, which is why I can even justify wearing a hat to keep my wild, wet hair under control at the moment. So, who have we got in there? We've got Steve, we've got Dwarven Darkness as well. Truly a packed house already. So, let's just lower my chair into the painting position. And today, well, I've actually uncovered a Games Workshop scandal here, which I think can be covered as part of the international miniature scandal on the Andy and Rem show on Tuesday. But just to give you a little preview now, the Citadel paint holder. So when you're putting in one of these big shade bottles, you can see that it actually fits in very nicely and leaves you with a good view of the name of the paint you're about to use. However, look at this outrage. All I can see is that it's a contrast. I have to actually pull it out to check that I'm using the right one here. So that is truly outrageous. So for someone that's storing multiple paints in these for an extended period of time, if they're only using 3 of them at once, for example, and if they're similar colours, then you could end up with a situation where you use the wrong paint. Can you actually believe that? It's truly diabolical. I don't know how that was allowed to happen. So, this is what we're going to be using anyway. Contrast. First step, I'm going to paint them the same way, I think, that I painted the custom Dreadfiends that I've got here. I like that skin colour, nice purpley pinky kind of colour to it. So I'm going to do the same thing for the butchers. Not every unit's going to look like that, but there are only so many ways of painting purple and pink, so some of the units are going to be done the same way. For example, the Shadow Hulk has been done differently because I airbrushed that whole thing in purple, so he's going to be a bit more purpley looking, I think, rather than pink. Butchers, though, I'm going to do them this way. I'm going to contrast up pretty much the entire miniature, I think, first of all. I'm not sure whether to leave these kind of hairy, buttockle and groinal areas and maybe do those in the same colour that I did the hair on the Dreadfiends. So I might leave those for now. The tentacles coming out the back of the head, I think I'm going to do those in a different shade of purple or pink at the end, which will be very exciting. So we need water pot open. We need a brush suitable for contrast paints. So let's get a nice fat juicy one. Well, it's not juicy yet, but it will be as soon as it's absorbed the sweet, sweet paint nourishment. Let's give it a good shake and see what falls out. Well, nothing fell out, so let's open it. I'm using the Volupus or Volupus pink, which for some reason is less pink than, where is it? It's less pink than this one, to my eye at least. So it's weird to remember that. When I want something that looks a bit purplish, I use the pink. When I want something that looks really pink, I use the purple. I didn't name these suckers, did I? So let's get it in the paint holder so that it's not going to fly away. And I'm not using the wet palette right now, so I can rest it up there. So you can see I've converted these so that they don't all have the same arms. Some of them have had their weapons removed, and the arms slightly reposed as well. What's everyone else working on at the moment? Anything extra spicy? Extra tender? Moist? Succulent? So this is going to be mostly painted over, this contrast. I'm just using it to get the crevices, and then we'll see how it looks when it dries though. Because obviously these are different miniatures to the ones I was using it on before, so it might have a different end result, different levels of detail, different material, and so on. Just going to cover pretty much the whole miniature, I think. And see how we go from there. I might do if I'm going to do hair on these guys, I might do them a different colour. That might be the difference. So I'm just going to do all of it in this contrast for now. I'm going to see how it looks when it's dry. It's 5 of these guys, which is all I have right now until I buy more. For now, this will be enough to make 1 horde, if that's the way I want to go with it. I will end up getting more in the future. I'm going to need more Nightstalkers. Got Graham in the chat as well. All the usual suspects in there so far. So I think I have decided that when lockdown is over, whenever that moment comes, then instead of doing one of these every day, depending how much I'm painting, I'll probably do at least 1 a week, because it keeps my painting motivation up. But I may do more than that. We'll see how it goes. For the moment, I'm just content trying to do one of these every day, just to help everyone retain their sanity during these turbulent times. Because I'm nice like that. And don't you forget it. So that will do for now, I think. And then when that's dry, I'll go back and make sure that there's no bits of white left. So it's looking very purpley at the moment. Yes, it is truly unbelievable, Steve. 2 scandals there. I'm going to bring that up with Mr. Remington on Tuesday and see what he thinks about it, because I'm sure he will share my outrage. Perhaps almost as outraged as when we found out that the standard Games Workshop dice have the symbol on the 1s and the Forge World dice have the symbols on the 6s. That was possibly the biggest scandal in Games Workshop history. So, any other exciting developments? I was talking to Spud the other day about potentially doing some kind of online gaming goodness. So that should be interesting. Possibly something on his channel, or the Chilling Wargamers channel. I think he just uses that one now. So if you're not already subscribed there, I'm sure you can keep your eyes peeled, but you should be subscribed to Chilling Wargamers anyway, shouldn't you? Especially since I used to be on it. I think most of the old episodes are still there. So when you're thirsting for that sweet, sweet Andy-based content, and it's been a few hours since I uploaded a video, you know where to find extra stuff. I'm not sure which channel he'll put it on, but there was talk of some Dawn of War related action, because there's that mode on Dawn of War where you just fight off endless hordes of enemies, and you just have 1 character at a time. I have to see what he's got planned for that. But that is a game mode that I've played in the past, and it used to be quite fun. I need to talk to Mr. Remington about the next Vermintide session and when that's going to be. And I've put a bit of a temporary halt on Space Hulk Deathwing for now, while focusing on Vermintide. I've played a bit of Vermintide off stream to try and level up my character a bit and get some better weapons. Okay, there's that guy done. Dwarven Darkness. Individuals raise cane over dice with logos on them, even when I clearly point out that one side is a 6 and the other is a 1. Yeah, I think having symbols on multiple sides is quite annoying. The easiest way is to just have symbols only on the 6s, and failing that, symbols always on the 1s, not both. Otherwise you can end up in the sticky situation that someone found themselves in at that Kings of War tournament in America, where there were cheating accusations thrown around, and I'm not sure whether anything long-term has come of that regarding bans or what have you. But the gist of it seemed to be that the guy had some dice with symbols on 1s and some dice with symbols on 6s, and seemed to be claiming that the symbols were always 6s. Something along those lines, that's what I understand of it. It's just a lot of rumour and innuendo, though. I am a fan of symbols on the 6s because, well, actually, I'll put an exception to that at the end, but symbols, I think, should be the most exciting number that comes up on the dice. You want the logo that's on there to be associated with good things, so having it on the 6 seems to make sense to me. Like, it's so successful, here's the fancy symbol on your dice to congratulate you. However, if the symbol on there is a skull, or something equally deadly or bad looking, then I would suggest that it's okay if they're all on the 1s instead. Because 1 in most games is a failure. But in general, stick to the 6s, I think. Keeps things simple, no confusion. So I still haven't got the bases sorted out for this army. Someone did very kindly send me a lot of MDF bases that they didn't need anymore. So I think a lot of those will be suitable. And they're the good thickness as well. Because if you look on somewhere like war bases, some of them are 2mm thickness and some of them are 3mm thickness. And 2mm is okay for certain base sizes, but when you're onto the big heavy units and the big wide bases, they can warp a bit, and 3mm makes that a bit less common, I've found. Okay, we've got this bad boy contrasted up. Next. Storm Darkness says, I was at the US Masters. He was changing his mind on what the logos were during the game when it suited him. Well, that certainly sounds bad. The one thing that I've noticed that people do, I'm going to assume that it's usually not intentional for most people, but one thing that people do that they change when it suits them is how crooked a dice is allowed to land on the table before they try and re-roll it. Because I've almost got myself in trouble sometimes in games because I'll roll a dice. It's successful, but it's slightly at an angle the way it's landed. And my opponent has not said anything and was happy to continue the game. And then I've announced that I'm re-rolling it. Because I want my dice to land perfectly flat, or at the very least, on a flat surface. So if they land on, by flat surface I mean not kind of bumpy. So if it lands on something that's at a very small angle, as long as it lands flush to that surface, then it's okay, because sometimes gaming tables just don't have that much perfect flat terrain on them. But if it lands on a very, very fine slope, then I'd accept that as well, as long as the surface of the dice is flat. But I typically insist on re-rolling if there's any kind of slight offness to the dice, even if it ends up costing me the game. And there have been times where my opponent was happy to continue with the dice landing as it did, and then I ended up failing as a result of re-rolling that dice. It's happened at least once with a turn 7 roll, because it's not just about winning, it's about knowing that I won under the correct way of playing, shall we say. And I've set the precedent in my games that I'm going to re-roll those dice. So I'm not going to change that when it suits me. Although I know for a fact that some people do, whether they mean to or not. Dwarven Darkness says cocked dice should always be re-rolled. Yeah, I agree with that. I use a dice tray, but sometimes that doesn't work because my opponent can't always see. Yeah, dice trays are a bit of a tricky one because you don't always have that much space in them, and in Kings of War sometimes you need to roll a vast amount of dice in a short amount of time. Another thing that's inconsistent that people do is when a dice falls out their hand before the dice roll, and sometimes I know of at least one person I can think of off the top of my head that does this, not in the Kings of War scene, but at least one person I can think of from the past who does this. But if it landed on a favourable number, then they wouldn't pick it up again. They would just leave it there and then roll the rest of the dice on top of it, pretty much, or next to it. Whereas if it was a bad number, then they would pick it up again and roll the whole batch. If a dice falls out of my hand before a dice roll, then my criteria is if it's landed on a number, then it gets picked up, regardless of what the number is. If it's still rolling and it hasn't stopped yet, then I might throw all the other dice after it quick if I'm in a hurry. As long as it's not landed yet. But if it's landed, you get that ambiguity of whether you should pick it up or not. So I always like to pick it up if the number has been revealed. If it's on its way down and just bouncing around, then I will sometimes just throw all the other dice around it quick, if it hasn't revealed its number yet. But usually, if it falls out of my hand, I'll just grab it before it stops rolling and put it back in my hand again. Steve says that's how Rem beats you at AOS then. I can tell you right now that it's not Mr. Remington that has done that. The only thing he does is summon the spirit of himself, essentially, by shouting out Remington at the top of his lungs whenever he rolls any kind of test on the dice, which usually doesn't help him. I'm sure I'd get more views on this video if I titled it something like Dice Etiquette. But I don't feel like doing that. Okay, is this guy done as well? Any little crevices that I've missed? Doesn't look like it. So depending how this looks when it dries, I could make them look slightly different to the Dread Fiends if I skip a phase of the painting. If they look like they'll just take a nice dry brush as the next coat, then it would simplify it a lot. And it would also add some variety to the colour scheme in the army. Closing the lid. Rinsing off the brush. The one kind of accidental cheating that everyone does is when you're looking at a big pile of dice to pick out the ones that missed or the ones that hit, depending how many there are, and someone accidentally leaves a miss in the hit pile or something like that. Everyone does that by mistake, I assume, 99% of the time. Obviously, you never know what's going through people's minds. So I'm sure in the vastness of the Kings of War community, there are some people that intentionally leave dice in there that shouldn't be there. But it is hard to spot. I mean, you've seen those like puzzles on Facebook where they'll have a big board of dice lined up, and they'll say spot the mistake, and you're looking down the pattern for one dice that's the wrong number. And the fact that that takes a really long time, even if it's something like all of them are fours and then there's a 5 in there somewhere that you don't spot for a long time somehow. So that kind of thing can innocently happen on the table, especially when you're looking at a bigger variety of numbers. And you're in a hurry as well when you're on the clock. So what I do, typically, I'll roll all my dice on the table, slide all the misses off to one side, and leave all the hits in a pile and just look at them for a good few seconds so my opponent can look as well. And then when I feel they've had adequate time to double check that I've got it right, I'll then pick all those dice up. If I roll a ton of dice and there's barely any hits at all, then I'll probably just kind of nudge the ones that hit off to one side if there's any like 2 out of 30 or something. But usually take the misses out unless it's going to be much, much quicker to just grab a couple of hits. If you've got something that's hitting on 6s, for example, you're not going to have too many. And you should be able to pick them out, usually without moving too much stuff anyway. Okay, what do we want to do now, now that I've applied the contrast paint? Obviously, it's going to take a while to dry properly. This guy looks fairly dry, but I'm going to wait till they're 100% dry and then go in and just dab on any little areas that have turned white as it's dried. There are a few little specks here and there. Probably where I've put it on quite thick and there's maybe been a bubble in there, so when it dries, then it leaves a little untouched crevice. So that's how they're looking at the moment. Let's get a bit of focus there. So yeah, you can see a bit of white there that I've missed, but I'll be able to fix that when it's fully dry. If I tried to fix it now, then there's a chance I would mess up bits that haven't completely dried yet, and it would look pretty silly. So I'm going to go back in at the end when they're all dry and fix that up, and then go on to the next step when I've decided what that's going to be. So another thing that I need to consider for the Nightstalkers is obviously the bases. So I've got a base right here. These bad boys need to go on the bases. But have I fully decided what to do with them yet? Not really. I decided I was going to do something really weird with them. I even did a bit of doodling on the back of this one. So you can see I was thinking of a tiled layout with like a hole to some kind of hideous nightmare dimension on there. But how I would represent that exactly, whether it's going to be a kind of mirrored effect in there, what would I even use to make hideous a hideous portal to another plane of existence in there. Reflective surface on the bottom with green transparent paint over it, I think was where I was leaning when I was planning out this one. So I've got lots of these bases, so I could make it as a test. But I need to look for some way of making the floor tiles or whatever else I'm going to do. You know, like a chessboard kind of appearance. Because that always looks pretty creepy. But I'm not sure if that's going to be the best on the battlefield. I'm not sure if that's going to look the best. It needs to be some kind of weird colour. I do have purple bushes. Let me see if I've got them under here somewhere. Because I did buy some for my Dead Zone Rebs. Kind of alien plant-looking things. They should be in here somewhere. Yep. There we go. So I think I got these from Bad Squiddo. So like purple plant life. So I'm thinking of using those. I think they'd look really good with Nightstalkers. So I'm going to leave these out actually, so I don't forget about them. And have I got any other kind of weird alien looking plants? Don't think so. I've got lots of nice natural looking plants, but not alien ones. So let's put those away and keep the nice purple ones out for now. I'll just put those under there. So if anyone's got any ideas for these bases, because the more I think about floor tiles, the less I think it'll look good. I kind of want it to look like an actual battlefield on there, but how? And I do like the idea of kind of a hole in the ground with a reflective surface and maybe like things reaching out of it, tentacles coming out of these holes, and green slime in there. I think that would look really good, and it would tie in nicely with the green slime motif I've got coming out of the mouths of my dread fiends. Like that. So I think that would be quite interesting to attempt. Just need to decide how to go about it exactly. Do I build up a layer with milliput and then build the crevice into that, which is what I did with my undead Rordians. There's lots of milliput put down on the base. I pressed the models down into it because that was just the style that was going to be best for them, because they're all metal and really heavy and I wanted something to embed them on the base. And then I just made the big crevices, fashioned them out of the milliputs, and then put the water effect inside those craters. But the Nightstalkers obviously have to be a little bit different. Don't want to do the same thing over and over again. I've also got the option of doing some kind of water effect. You know what I think always looks really cool? When people do those bases where it's like a cross section of a swamp or water or something like that, where they'll have the model in the middle of the base, and then the water level will go up to like its knees, and it'll be nice and see-through resin on top of the base in a perfect square, because they'll have put the base in something, sealed off all the edges with Lego or something like that, and then poured the resin in. I really like that look. But I don't know if that's really expensive. I wouldn't like to use the stuff I use for my League of Rordia to do that. I just use Pound Shop 2-part resin glue, basically. And that's not the best quality. You do get a lot of bubbles in it. So it's fine for doing just some shallow water, but I wouldn't like to use it for something deeper like that. I think there'd be issues with it. I could look into getting some of the more expensive resin, because I think I'm currently up on my hobby budget for the year, which I work out by buying things, obviously, and selling things on eBay, and also that sweet, sweet YouTube and Patreon money, which trickles in. Let's see what am I on Patreon at the moment. What's my funding level at the moment? I believe it's about $25 a month I'm on right now, which usually pays for my painting supplies, which is obviously a nice little bonus because it means I can then put other funds into actual miniatures. Sturat says bubbles mean there is something else down there. Yes, some bubbles are fine, but there have been a couple of occasions where I used it where it was extremely bubbly and it didn't look that great. And when I used it on a terrain board as well, it looks like it started to turn kind of white and peel away from the thing it stuck to when I put it on a display board. So I had to end up covering it with bushes. So I don't think that stuff is really ideal if you want it to look really amazing and you want depth to it. I wouldn't recommend that stuff. It dries really fast as well, so it's not great for maneuvering around. And if you get it stuck to a model, then it basically has to stay there, because by the time you've tried to remove it, then all of it's dry and you're toast. When you said there's something down there, it just reminded me of the trapdoor theme at the end where it goes, "'Cause there's something down there, down now, down now." Wow. Everyone should love trapdoor and be intimately familiar with it, for the record. Oh, hello there, Boney. Back! Back! Top-notch Boney impression there. Okay, what to work on now? I could do a bit of work on the Shadow Hulk. And the way I said that reminded me of something else. It just reminded me of Baldur's Gate 2 and the Shadow Thieves, with their infamous line, "No one crosses the Shadow Thieves and lives." So, what can we do with this guy? Let's move the butchers out the way for now, because I need them to fully dry off before I go in with the touch-ups, so I'll probably just do that off camera later. For the record, my favourite episode of Trapdoor, I think, is the one where Boney gets a body and he's like a horse running around. I've got a body! So I've done all the tentacles in this purpley pinkish. It's more pinkish than the purplishness of the skin. And I'm thinking that the faces, I'm not going to do them in a different colour. I'm just going to highlight them with dry brushing, so they'll look like they're just part of the skin, which I think would be a pretty snazzy look. So what I might do, because all the tentacles are actually painted with the base coat, I could just dive in there now with a wash or a contrast over everything. But before I do that, I should probably neaten up the tentacles first, because they're not absolutely perfect at the moment. So let's work on some tentacles, shall we? Might have to tilt the camera up a little bit so you can actually see some of this bad boy. There you go. You can still only see him in leg form right now. Very disappointed by the lack of trapdoor references in the chat right now. I'm going to assume that everyone's either too old or too young for trapdoor, if you're not intimately familiar with it. Taking the lid off the pallet and dropping it, but it's all good. So I haven't put any new water in this for a while, but there's still a lot of moisture in there. And look how wrinkly the paper is in there now, though. So this paper is going to need to be replaced soon. The matte varnish I had on there from the other day is still extremely wet. And the gold that's been in there for about a week is still wet. Dicey guy in the house. Steve says, too old, I think my kids used to watch it. That's probably about right. Depends how old your kids are. What year was Trapdoor? I'm going to have to look this up now, see when it started. What year did it start? So let's see. Originally shown in the United Kingdom in 1984. I don't know when they stopped showing it. Original release 1984 to 1990. Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. Graham Rigg, I love Trapdoor. Excellent. Steve, my eldest is 27. Yeah, they might be. They were probably a bit young to get the prime years of Trapdoor, but I imagine it was repeated for many years after. But I think like late 80s, early 90s when most people probably would remember it from. And it's on YouTube. Good. That's good to hear. Both seasons are currently available on iTunes and Prime Video. That's also good to hear, because it is top-notch entertainment. Just looking at the Wikipedia page for Trapdoor now. Only 40 episodes. Let's see. Apparently, it was also on Channel 4 from 1996 to 2003, which is when I imagine more people would have been exposed to it. Obviously, this is the kind of content that you come for. Stu Rat says, Incredible Hulk has green skin and purple trousers. Shadow Hulk should have green trousers / loincloth. That is a possibility. I'm going to be doing the clothes after the skin, I think, because they're all pretty much the way it's textured. Obviously, clothes would be on top of the skin, but they kind of stick out a bit from the skin as well. So if I was painting the cloth first, I would have trouble dry brushing the skin underneath. So the clothes might end up being last. The clothes and the accessories. I'm going to try and do this whole army without using any orange, actually, just to be different. Not every army needs to have orange in it. The goblins are all orange. The abyssal dwarves have orange as maybe the third most prominent colour after the gold and the black. And what else? My Rordians, they don't have much orange in them. A lot of yellow. So let's neaten up these tentacles. What colours did I have here? So I've got this colour here, and the squid pink, and this one that doesn't have a label on it. So I'm pretty sure I used these two pinks for the tentacles here. Can't believe this one doesn't have the name of the paint on it. So the purple is definitely darker, I think, than the purple I've used on the skin so far. But once I've contrasted or washed this skin, it should come out closer to this. So I should be able to use this paint on it later. I think for the Dread Fiends, the colour that I did was this painted on, and then a dry brush of this. So I've got a few different paints to work with. I've still got some GW purples around somewhere, but I think they're mostly dried up. So let's neaten up those tentacles, shall we? Let's start with the light pink. Giving it a good shake. Don't need too much out here because we're just neatening up a bit. And this is only for the front of the big tentacles, this one. So we can put this big paintbrush away. Don't need anything so hefty right now. So how is everyone maintaining their sanity during these weeks of lockdown? Has anyone gone back to any of their old hobbies of the past? Have you just doubled or tripled your painting output? What's everyone doing? Anyone that has extra free time, that is. Not everyone does, as we know. Essential workers among us may have even less free time now. So let's get tentacular. That is a phrase now. Just neatening up. Before the wash goes on. And I may have pointed out with the Nightstalkers in the past, I'm hopefully not going to spend as much time painting them as I did the Abyssal Dwarves, because going straight onto another army so fast, while some people can do it, some people are just painting machines, I think it would actually kill me if I was putting the same amount of time into these. So I'm looking for quicker methods with contrasts and dry brushing, and I think these are the kind of models that will suit that. They're supposed to look nightmarish and weird anyway, so they don't need pinpoint precision on certain things. Obviously it's not the easiest to paint because of the way I've built it. It's kind of spiraling tentacles all over the place. So I've managed to preserve my sanity not only by painting more, but any other free time I've had, I've tried to maybe play some games that I hadn't played for a long time. Played a bit of Left 4 Dead 2 recently, which I hadn't played for many a year. I used to play that a lot back in the day. I'm still on the lookout for more tentacles for my conversions, by the way. So if anyone knows a good source of tentacles, let me know. So this Tuesday, got the Andean Rum Show coming up, as usual nowadays. So that's going to be very exciting, especially with those scandals that I've uncovered that I mentioned earlier. Also, What the Hell Is That, of course, will be back. I don't know if we've got a guest lined up this week, I don't think so. But that is something we're looking into, getting more guests on. Okay, we've got the darker pink now for the back of the tentacles. And I spotted a couple of parts that I just totally missed last time. Or just didn't attempt because I was using a fat brush. Because I was working on this while I was waiting for paints to arrive, so I could complete my grotesques. That seems like a long time ago now, since the Hellfane's been done in the meantime. This paint's very thin, I think I need to shake it up a bit better. Giving it a vigorous and violent shake. So hopefully this is going to look pretty damn sweet when it's got a wash on it. tying these different shades of purple and pink together, and then I can start really working on it. That'll provide a nice solid base to build from, I think. It's a very experimental process though. The whole Nightstalker project has been one big experiment. Trying out different crazy things. Which is what makes it kind of fun. I don't feel any pressure to get them finished to a particular standard or in a particular time frame. Obviously, the Abyssal Dwarves are currently my red-hot sizzling favourites at the moment. So the Nightstalkers are going to be more of a fun kind of building and creativity project, and if I get a decent army out of it at the end that can do anything on the table, that'll just be a nice bonus. Once I've had a few games with them, when I've got enough for that, then I'll find out which units are good and which ones don't maybe suit my style so much, and possibly invest in more. But you know what I'm like? I like to take the units that look good. Which is why I'm tempted to start making lists with a Hellfane in it. I think that model's so sweet. Not even running it as a Greater Obsidian Golem, just actually lists featuring the Hellfane, even if it's not the most points efficient with my model collection. I would like to find a way to fit it in there. So hopefully I'll be able to get all this pink and purple roughly neatened up, and then I can get the wash on it. And that won't be the last step, there'll be lots of dry brushing and other things done. But that's where it's going to start. And that should hopefully start to come together and look more like it's going to look when it's complete. Every model that you're painting has one magic step where it just jumps from nothing to suddenly this looks like something now. When it really feels like you're making progress all of a sudden. down to the little tentacles now that are just sticking out all over the place. A few little bits that were missed on those. Got Sean Blake in the chat. Hello there. Okay, I'm going to do a bit more neatening up with the light pink in a minute when that's dry, before the wash or the contrast goes over it. I haven't decided which one to use yet. I've got a nice purple wash, Druchy Violet, or I've got those two contrast paints. That could make a good starting point for the rest of the miniature. For anyone that just joined, I've been working on the Butchers and the Shadow Hulk. So let's put him to one side for the moment. And then I'll go back and fix any little missing bits of contrast on the Butchers, where there may have been bubbles, perhaps. So let's crack open that contrast paint again. So we're almost at 1 hour, so I'm not going to be doing this for too long today, especially at this stage where there's lots of drying that I need to allow. But later on in the process, when I'm onto the dry brushing, then I'll probably do longer episodes. There's also the option of just working on different models as well. But I don't want to get too overwhelmed by working on too many different units at once. Just a few at a time, I think. At the moment, I think the Butchers and the Shadow Hulk are definitely enough to keep me occupied. The only other project that I'll mix in with those two, probably, is the bases for the Dread Fiends, or assembling if I'm not in the mood for painting one day. Or if it's really hot and I can't have the painting light on, then I might do some assembly instead. So I've got some more scarecrows to work on. I saw that Mantic had their virtual open day. I haven't looked at all the videos yet. There's a lot to chew through there, but I've had a look at some of the miniatures. Some very tasty looking stuff on there. If you haven't looked at that, I think all the videos are on the Mantic YouTube channel currently. Definitely worth a peek for anyone who's interested in the Mantic games. Only 2 likes on the video. What are you doing, people? That's clearly not enough. I can't see dislikes on this page that I'm on now, it only tells you likes. So there could be 5 dislikes on it for all I know. My channel has been getting a lot more dislikes since the return of the Andean Rum Show. So I'd imagine that people aren't pleased that my channel is being distracted from Kings of War content, perhaps. Or just people in the Age of Sigmar community who want a more competitive discussion show rather than just the silly business that we do. Up to 3 likes now, so that's a more solid number. My Vallejo paint rack hasn't arrived yet, which I'm very much looking forward to so I can free up all this desk space. I don't think I ordered it direct from the company, so I don't think I'm slandering anyone by talking about slow delivery times. I think it's just a random eBay seller I've got it from. Okay, got rid of all the little white specks on them. Who says, I read somewhere that in gladiatorial combat the thumbs down was the signal to spare, not kill the loser, so I don't know what to do. If that is actually true, then that's going to shatter many people's minds, I think. Soaping off the brush. Look at this hideous brush soap that I've been wearing down for years now. But it is the same bar that I've had for many years, though. So it's obviously good stuff. And the underside is perfectly clean, so I can just turn it over and get twice as much joy out of it. So it's going to, by the time this brush soap is done, it'll have lasted me, I would predict, 10 years before it's too toasted and unusable. put that to one side, make sure all these lids are closed, and put that back. So, Steve is off now. Well, this video is actually about to end now. We're at 1 hour, 7 minutes and something. So, overnight, what I'll probably do, I'll make sure this guy's fully neatened up, and then I'll either put the wash on him tonight or I'll save that for tomorrow, because that'll be exciting, won't it? So we can work on him tomorrow, more work on the butchers, hopefully some more work. We can possibly even get close to finishing the skin, depending which techniques I decide to use on them. And base coats on weapons. I'm thinking of doing their weapons nice and rusty, because they are supposed to be nightmarish creatures, and what's more nightmarish than a rust? Not much, if you ask me. So, let's wrap this one up. Don't forget to like the video, obviously. Don't forget to subscribe if for some ungodly reason you haven't already. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, including my Facebook group and Twitter and all that good stuff down there. Also, the various fundraising sources that exist to donate to the channel on a one-off or monthly basis in exchange for this near-daily red-hot, sizzling, spicy, succulent, tender, moist, juicy, tasty, finger-licking good content. You know it's worth it. So I'm going to disappear from your screen right now, and you can just stare at the butchers for a moment. See if this gives you nightmares. Go on, focus, there you go. So, while you stare at that pink abomination, don't forget, we'll be back tomorrow with more Lockdown Hobby Time, and good night out there, whatever you are.